Good evening, weird fish people. I have been doing a fish in cycle on the baby Oscar tank behind me. It's a 75-gallon tank with a Aquatop UV canister filter on it, and there is a baby albino Oscar in there and a baby tiger Oscar. With the fish in cycle, you have to do some pretty frequent water changes, and I've actually gone about a day or two past when I should, just so we could get some good results on this, because today I'm going to go over using your API Master Freshwater test kit. And it's kind of funny that it's the Master kit because they don't even include all of their freshwater tests. For example, there's no general hardness test in here, but not a big deal. I know here my water is high in pH and absolutely as hard as it gets. So our local fish store conditions fish to it, adapts them to it. They use our natural water here. They call it 8.0 neutral here actually at the fish store. So not a big deal that my water's hard or high in pH. In fact, I have African cichlids with no special substrate to raise the pH of the water because the pH is already at like 8.1, 8.2 on any given day there. So they're totally fine. The other reason I'm going to do a water change with these guys is I tried to feed them some plankton tonight and nobody wanted to eat it. And so now there's just plankton on the substrate, which will eventually turn into ammonia. And I don't need that surge in ammonia. So let's go ahead and test the water using this test kit, go over how to use it, because even though it has detailed instructions, as we know, if instructions are more complicated than Legos with pictures, then nobody reads them. Alright, so when you first crack open your API Freshwater Master Test Kit, the first thing you're going to want to do, aside from read your instructions, which I do recommend, is take your instructions once you've kind of gone over them and followed them and drop them into a sandwich bag. We want this chart on the back of the instructions to last a long time. This chart on the back of the instructions is kind of our scales by which we're going to measure everything. Now, we'll just set this here. You're also going to find 4 little glass vials. Oh no, they fell. And they're actually quite breakable if you drop them on the floor from, say, a table. You're going to find 4 little glass vials. Today we are going to use 5 for demonstration reasons, and you'll understand that here in a minute. 4 lids for the vials, or test tubes, or whatever you want to call them, don't care. Not that picky. I'm going to pull these bottles out of here to get to this last couple lids. Now, I like using the caps for the test tubes slash vials slash storage containers for water. So from there, we're going to have our tests. First, we have pH in the blue bottle. Now, we also have high range pH in the red bottle, and I'll kind of go over that in a minute. We have our first of the 2 bottle tests, and then we have our ammonia, bottle 1 in a lighter, almost tan yellow, and bottle 2 in a darker yellow. We have another 1 bottle test with nitrite, and we have another 2 bottle test with nitrate, being the 2 purple colors. This composes all of the tests in our test kit, and we're going to test all of them today, kind of explain the differences and the nitrification process. So I'm going to turn around behind me and grab 4 vials of Oscar tank water. So if pro tip number 1 was putting our instructions in a sandwich bag so that they stay dry, pro tip number 2 is that if you fill your vials all the way with water and you're either over the tank, over your sink, or a concrete floor, you can simply flick your wrists to lower the water down to the line. On your vial, there's a little white line. That's how full it's supposed to be. So, a little flick of the wrist. You get pretty good at this. And we're down to the white line. Rinse and repeat, for lack of a better term, for another 4 vials here. Normally once you know your pH, you're going to do 4. So now we have a vial in front of each one of our tests. We're going to start with pH. Most people do. It's the first one in the instructions. Naturally, the way the kit's put together seems like the first bottle you'd go to. We'll grab that. On the front of it, once we pull the cap off, it's going to say add 3 drops. So we take our 3 drops. Comes out yellowish orange. Boom, turns blue immediately. 2, 3. So we have our 3 drops. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of using the caps. Give it a good shake. And we have a test. So, it's blue. When we compare it to our chart here, and this is your first common mistake, if we compare it to our chart, and we go down pH, down to blue, down to this color blue, we have a pH of 7.6. And all the time on Facebook groups or forums, you'll see people show their parameters, and their parameters say their pH is 7.6. And my first question is it really though? Because when this scale maxes out, here, we are supposed to move to this scale. That's our high range pH. Now, we open up our high range pH, and it says add 5 drops. Easy enough. None of this is hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's drop that in there. This will be one of my favorite parts of this video because my pH is naturally about 8 from the tap, and most people, for some reason, expect to need a pH of 7 to keep fish alive. Now, you probably do need a lower pH sometimes. For instance, breeding discus, you need to be a much lower pH than what I have here, but for keeping African cichlids, which favor a high pH, and keeping Oscars that are conditioned to it and adapted to it, not a big deal. But let's pull out our scale and let's look at it. As we scroll down our pH scale, I am actually, as we scroll down our pH scale, I am actually somewhere between where it shows our 8.2 and our 8.4. So we'll call it 8.3. This is not abnormal for where I live. This is pretty normal on any given day. So let's drop that down here. But my point with this is that if I am 8.3, I am certainly not 7.6. And if you are maxing out this pH scale, you need to test with your high pH. Or vice versa. If you're bottoming out that high pH scale, you're in that 7.4 range, you need to then go ahead, test low pH as well. Test, well, your regular pH test, however you want to say it. Now, on to our first 2-bottle test. Bottle 1 of your ammonia solution. And this is where it also gets a little different. We're adding 8 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I like to give this one good shake or so with my thumb on it, and add my second solution, which also says add 8 drops. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, this is the first thing you're testing for in your cycle. This is the first step of the nitrification process, and this is what fish waste, decaying plants, decaying fish, decaying food, all release into your tank is ammonia. Let's give it a shake. And this takes a minute. But when we look at ammonia and how the nitrification process works, ammonia is toxic to fish. So we need it gone from the tank. And you could just do water changes, but there's no way you're ever going to keep up with a stock tank and its ammonia-like production. It's pretty impossible. But fortunately for us, in our filter lives what we call beneficial bacteria, and we call it that because it is beneficial. What it does is first, on our first set of beneficial bacteria, as our tank starts to cycle, will consume this. It will eat this ammonia, and this is what comes from our fish waste, our food waste, etc. It will eat this ammonia and it will produce nitrite. Now, nitrite is also harmful to fish. Great, right? Harmful to fish, but not so harmful as ammonia. Sweet. That's a little better, right? Now, when we look at this test, we're back to simple. We have add 5 drops. This is where we might see some color change with the way this cycle has been going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one comes out easier. Now, when doing a fishless cycle, and you're just cycling an empty tank, I don't even begin to test for nitrates until I've already seen nitrites in the tank. So just like we have beneficial bacteria that grows and consumes the ammonia and produces nitrite, we have a second species of beneficial bacteria that grows and consumes nitrite and produces nitrate. However, when doing a fishless cycle, I don't even test for nitrate until I've already seen nitrites. Why? Well, because if you do, you're going to run out of this test, because this is another 2-bottle test, but it also is 10 drops, so it's twice as much as the nitrite test. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for bottle number 1. Now, another pro tip here, anytime you're having trouble with any of these tests, you should shake the bottle and then test again. Especially this nitrate test tends to crystallize in the bottle and really need to be broken up, shaken vigorously. Second 10 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Gah! That one comes out way faster. So, nitrates. Well, is there bacteria that consumes them? Yeah, it does exist. Unfortunately, most of us don't have fish tanks with enough dark, slow-moving portions of water and places in our tank for it to hide and live. But there's also the solution of planted tanks. Planted tanks tend to really chew through and reduce nitrate levels as they consume nitrates for sustenance, but we also can just do water changes. And this is where we will do your weekly water changes, your monthly water changes, depending on your stocking level and your maintenance. But when we look at what is considered toxic to fish, and we go across this chart here, on ammonia we don't want to break this, 0.25 into this 0.5. That's a bit much. So we don't want to get more than 2 squares. In nitrite, and once again, we probably don't want to get too far past 0.5. If we hit 1.0, definitely big water change time. But here on our nitrate, most people won't water change until 40, so they won't water change until 5 squares down on this guy. Now this test also takes a few minutes, and as I talk here, I'm sure you can see it getting darker and darker, and let's just see how dark this gets. So this is as dark as our nitrates are likely to get when we take them on our chart here. We are somewhere between 10 and 20 on our parts per million. So not a lot. Not necessary for water change, but our nitrite is kind of right about there. And we're getting a tad bit of ammonia, so we're kind of overrunning the bit of So we're kind of overrunning the bit of beneficial bacteria we do have. So we're going to do a water change. That mixed with the fact that I have to vacuum out a bunch of plankton anyway. It's time to do a water change on this tank. But This takes away a lot of the mystery of what's going on. This allows us to see how our cycle is doing, see if our cycle has crashed, find out why our fish aren't doing well, potentially. Of course, there's different things, bacterial infections, fungal infections, viruses, stuff that can also affect fish, but our water parameters should also be good. So that being said, when we look at this test kit, this is a must-have. This is a must-have for anybody with one or more freshwater tanks. If your one is large or you have multiple little ones, definitely a necessity. I would look to pick one up. If you pick one up at your local fish store and you like supporting them, generally you can find it in the $30 to $40 range. It's a bit cheaper at your mega chains, in about the $30 range, but it's commonly found on Amazon for about $15. I picked up both of these from my local fish store. I do like to support them. I actually went to high school with the owner, and I've known him since we were in middle school, and I happen to like him. I also like supporting local businesses, but if you're picking one up on Amazon, you know, there's no real harm in that unless you do have a local fish store and their prices aren't outrageous. You should try to pick it up from them. You should also, if you found this video helpful, you should also go ahead and leave a like down below. Feel free to comment. You can talk about how terrible my pH of, 8.3-ish is. You can talk about how terrible having, having 0.5, 0.75 parts per million of nitrite is. You can talk about how terrible fish in cycles are, or you can just talk about how helpful the video is. I'm not really too concerned about it. If you like content like this and you want to see more content with the baby Oscars, Bill and Ted, be sure to subscribe to the channel, throw that notification bell on so you get an alert every time I post a video. We're going to continue to feature Bill and Ted. They're a lot of fun. We're going to continue to feature Pocket, the baby bearded dragon, although now he seems to be a rambunctious teenager beardy dragon. And of course, more African cichlid tank, the adult beardies, Hiccup the leopard gecko, tarantulas, all sorts of content, always coming, always working. Hard to find time to edit, but I get it up in time. Take that however you want.